We were fortunate to have best-selling author Sarah Thornton talking to major collector Pamela Joyner about the art market and in particular the role of collecting African American artists at this point.
I'm thrilled today to be talking to Pamela Joyner, who, with her husband Fred Jufrida, has one of the most important collections of African American abstraction in the world, if not the most important one. And I'm keen to ask you, Pamela, at this moment, mid-July, have you been talking to your artist friends? How are they doing?
You know, I have been speaking to some, but others seem to be sort of burrowed away, working madly, which I think is, you know, an apropos and almost traditional notion of how artists work. And so some artists, so one of the most recent pieces I've purchased, I purchased from a Bay Area artist by the name of David Huffman. And the piece is entitled George Floyd. And so I would characterize David as a social abstract painter. But he clearly, and he had been working on this painting before the moment at which we all started paying attention to George Floyd and his, you know, unfortunate demise. But David switched course mid painting and made a work about this figure that was apropos to the moment. And so not only did I buy that painting, but now I'm very interested, and I've sort of been surveying my artists about what they're making that is reflective of this moment. And so different people are doing different things, and some things have outcome, like Simone Lee has created a sculpture for a charitable foundation that we were really thrilled to be able to buy one of. And other people are doing other things in response to this, you know, very dramatic moment in our social history that makes us reflect on the substance of everything that we do. And then artists like Leonardo Drew, who really likes to work in solitude for long periods of time, feels as though this moment is a gift, that he can't go anywhere. And so he really is tied to the studio and describing himself as having one of the most productive periods in his career. So different people are doing different things. And I might have sort of a little pod in the collection, a little through strand in the collection a year from now or 2 years from now that really is sort of designed to reflect this moment.
And what would you call that moment? Would it be like the COVID-19 Black Lives Matter resurgence? What would it be?
Sarah, just can you ask that again? But again, remember to look at the phone camera.
Sorry.
You're getting in, I know you guys are having a conversation, it's a little weird, but just so we can use that as your primary camera. So thank you.
Yeah. And what would you call this moment? The COVID-19 Black Lives Matter resurgence? Can you articulate that?
I'm not sure I can articulate that at this moment in time. I think I need to get a little bit more distance. But I think that when we all look back 1 year or 20 years from now, we will be able to identify, you know, basically all of 2020 and probably beyond, and maybe a little bit before, because maybe we'll see antecedents to some of the things we're experiencing that aren't as obvious to us today as they might be with the benefit of the distance of time. But I think whatever we call it or however we define it, I think it is so consequential that we will know it when we see it.
Agreed. I agree completely. So let's skip forward to the future. Come 2050 or even 2040, who will we, if we want to have, okay, I'm gonna start again. Let's skip forward to the future. Come 2050, what African-American artists will be essential to people's collections if they seek to represent the late 20th and early 21st century?
Well, I ask myself that question in a little bit different way, right? I ask the first part of the question, what African-American artists will represent, and then I would fill it in with the best of the culture, the height of the practice, the most transformational careers. And in what we collect, I think there's some obvious candidates and some young candidates about whom we're really hopeful. And so, if you look back to artists who were, born in the early 20th century, I think certainly Norman Lewis and Alma Thomas have an unassailable place in history, not only based on what they produced themselves, but based on the large number of artists they influenced. Rolling forward to a later generation, I think that Jack Whitten, for the reasons I was describing earlier, he had a number of innovations. So in 1970, he began making what some scholars call his developer paintings. And some of those paintings were made with implements he designed. Some were made with afro combs. Some were made with things that we might call squeegees. And of course, there's a very famous and very capable German painter who also is etched in the annals of art history, who we admire for his squeegee paintings. But those,
Victor.
That's right. But those paintings were begun in the 1980s. And so Jack was a particular pioneer with respect to understanding and developing a way for addressing the manipulation of paint and materiality that was really innovative and cutting edge, all the way down to a painting we were discussing right before we got started, which was from his series of black monolith paintings, where he's taking paint, small bits of paint that look like tiles, that he's formulated the paints himself, and he's adhering the paint with paint. And so this underscores his own view of himself as a maker of painters, as opposed to a painter of paintings rather. And so he also, I think, has had an impact on subsequent generations. Mark Bradford, we talked about Von Span, Leonardo Drew in our collection, and there are others. So I think his legacy will be enduring. And of course, Sam Gilliam, who also in the 1970s took paintings off of the stretcher to explore the limits of painting. So those figures, I think, will be transformational. And then there are a group of young painters that I'm really enthusiastic about. Or artists, because sometimes they work with paint and sometimes they don't. So Kevin Beasley is one. She's not an abstract painter, but we own her in depth in this collection simply because I just can't resist the work. Jordan Casteel, Christina Quarles is another one who we're very enthusiastic about. And so one who I spent a lot of time thinking about over the summer is Michael Armitage. So we're very excited for their prospects as pillars of art history.
Love it. I love it. Can I just ask you about one figure that you didn't mention, but who has held the record for the highest price ever paid for a post-war work of art, and that is Jean-Michel Basquiat. Where does Basquiat stand in your art history?
Well, I mean, he's not in our collection, but I think it's very clear, that if innovation is one of the hallmarks and impact on the culture is another hallmark, he has, an ensured long-term place in the history books. And so everyone will be reading about him in 2050.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Pamela. It has been wonderful to see you, and I hope to see you in real life soon.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Thank you for watching this extended version, and please check out all the extended versions that are both on YouTube and on our website.